Hello and welcome to PCMag Live. I'm Dan Costa, he is Sascha Segan, and we've got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the top tech news, we're going to answer some of your reader questions, and we're going to show you one cool thing from off the shelf in the lab. Let's get started. It is a bad day for net neutrality. A DC Circuit Court has struck down the relatively modest FCC suggestions for how net neutrality should be implemented. This is not necessarily the end of the road, but it does mean right now there's basically no legal protection for net neutrality at all.
Well, first of all, this is almost definitely going to be appealed. It's the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. This will probably be appealed up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court can decide whether to take it on or not, but this is not the end of the legal road for net neutrality here. Also, I really want to mention that net neutrality essentially doesn't apply on mobile internet networks.
Which most people don't realize. Most people don't understand what net neutrality is anyway.
Okay.
But
well, then I'll explain net neutrality, which is that net neutrality is the principle that all traffic on the internet needs to be treated equally by internet service providers. That internet service providers cannot charge extra to speed up or slow down particular traffic from particular content sources. In the most extreme case, they can't block particular kinds of content, like, for instance, Comcast blocking BitTorrent, which was a big net neutrality war a couple of years ago.
Or theoretically blocking Netflix, which they would have lots of financial reasons to do. They would be able to do that if they have no protections.
What net neutrality proponents are worried about is the internet becoming a series of toll roads, where ISPs get to charge content providers for access to customers, and the people who can't pay, small or non-profit content providers, basically get the slowest, barest trickle of access to their customers. You have a multi-tiered internet where big rich companies can deliver their content fast and small poor companies deliver their content slow. That's what everybody's worried about with net neutrality.
That's the battle that's going on. So this is going back and forth. We've seen it, ebb and flow. Both sides have had victories. This is definitely a defeat for net neutrality fans. But again, not the end of the road. In other news, the New York Times has a breaking story about the NSA's latest ability to track people. I was sort of under this understanding that the NSA could get into any computer that was connected to the internet. Turns out your computer doesn't even need to be connected to the internet. There are 100,000 computers across the globe that are transmitting information wirelessly up to 8 miles away, which is then finding its way back into NSA servers. This is like science fiction. It's kind of fantastic as a tech story, but pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean, one funny thing I think is that I saw this on the blacklist like a month ago, which of course makes me wonder how real person of interest is, which is a whole different story. Okay,
that's a whole different show.
Is that AI out there? I want to know. We're not going to find that out. But yeah, the NSA compromised 100,000 computers in China, Russia, and the EU. They say they're not doing it in the US, but hey, who trusts them on this nowadays? They transmit, their little transmitter in a USB cable transmits data up to 8 miles to a briefcase-sized receiving station, and they can spy on whatever computer they want to. This is typical spycraft. It can pretty much be assumed that the foreign powers are doing the same thing to us. And it's just more of where does this end and what's permissible.
Yeah, I mean, you do need physical access to the device at some point, but yes, there's been stories about the NSA intercepting laptops before they get delivered and putting software on them, putting devices like this on them. So it's just, it really is a fascinating story. You can read more about that on PCMag.com. And then finally, this is a bit of good news, which is that this horribly offensive, Apple has pulled the Barbie plastic surgery app. This is a plastic surgery app that was designed and targeted at children, which actually walked you through the process of liposuction.
Okay, there's a bigger problem here. This app was horribly, disgustingly offensive and said all sorts of nasty things about fat people and was kind of gross and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And marketed towards kids.
And marketed towards kids. Okay, so obviously outrage rose and Apple took it down. But if you look at the app's developer who might be stealing someone's identity, I say might be because it appears to be someone's name, and if you search for that name, there is no person by that name developing apps, has a ton of apps on the App Store violating various copyrights. Some of the others are offensive. Like, it's just a bad actor in the Apple App Store. And you got to wonder, what's up with Apple's review team? Apple says they give you this trade-off of, well, you can't do everything in exchange for it's a safe space. They are not providing a safe space right now, at least with the 24 apps this mysterious
I would go out on a
individuals
limb, and we've got a lot of people, we've got a lot of Apple fans that watch this show. I go out on a limb and say that app developer is going to get shunned pretty quickly. But we'll probably set up shop under a different identity.
Maybe on Android.
Maybe on, well, almost certainly on Android. That was today's news. Let's move on to our reader question. We got this over Twitter, and this Chris wants to know, very simple, and he's not the only one, when is the Galaxy S5 coming out?
Okay, we managed to get some rumors recently, talked to some people at CES. Our current guess, and this is not on hard information, we don't have inside sources, but our current guess is that Samsung is going to hold an event probably in March. Probably, I'm guessing, in London, where they will introduce the Galaxy S5. Samsung has been enjoying doing its events separate from big trade shows like CES and Mobile World Congress.
They're a big enough company. Everybody all the journalists fly in. They get tons of coverage. They don't have to compete with a big crowded show with a lot of different product announcements. It's the biggest tech story of the day.
And in the past, their London events have been the most successful. So my guess is mid-March, you're going to hear a lot more about the Galaxy S5. We don't know much about this phone yet. Could be plastic, could be metal, could be both. Could have all sorts of cool, weird software features like Samsung always throws in there. But just hold on to your horses for about a month and a half, and there's a good chance you'll see it.
Yeah, definitely don't buy a new phone now.
Well, don't buy a Galaxy S4.
Don't buy a Galaxy S4.
Yeah.
That was our reader question. Let's move on to one cool thing. We test thousands of products here in New York City in our lab every year. Every day we pull one thing off the shelf and show it to you live on air. Today that thing is the Catz Killer Instinct Fight Stick. My notes say flight stick, but it's not a flight stick, it's a fight stick. And this is the first third-party controller for the Xbox One. And basically, as you can see, it's a remarkably analog, old-school controller.
Yeah, when I saw your notes, I thought, oh, it's the flight stick for the Monday Night Wars. But that's a little joke about something that happened at CES. You can look it up on YouTube. Yeah, this is for hardcore fighting gamers. It is user serviceable. User repairable, because you are going to hammer that thing, and it just takes Xbox One gaming to a new phase.
Yeah, very cool. We're going to have a full review up on PCMag.com shortly. We just got this in-house. This may have been a CES announcement. It's timed about the same time. But that has been PCMag Live for today. I'll invite you to tune in tomorrow for a brand new show. In the meantime, send us your questions in the comment section on YouTube and via email and on Facebook. We will answer them live on air. Thanks for tuning in.